Hello and welcome to the Ham Radio Crash Course. Welcome to Saturday. We have a really fun show. We're going to be talking to Ward Silver on his new Propagation book, where he is the editor, at least of the Propagation book. He'll tell the whole story. There's some fun details to be had. But more than that, what the heck is radio wave propagation? Why should you care about it? If you're a new technician, if you're a new general, or you're just going into a new area of amateur radio, why does propagation matter to you? Well, we'll find out, and Ward's going to be the guy to tell us all about it. So give me a couple of minutes, enjoy the memes, and we'll get started soon. All right. How's it going, everybody? I'm Josh, KI6NAZ. Thanks for clicking on the Ham Radio Crash Course. Man, propagation. It could make or break your POTA activation, let alone open up new and interesting repeaters you didn't even know were on the same PL tone as the repeater you normally talk in 100 miles away. It can all happen thanks to propagation, so we're going to find out some more about that. But before we get started, there's a lot of people out doing POTAs. I highly recommend you all get out there this week, and if you can swing it, get out there and have some fun on the air. There's a lot of really cool contacts people are making. I was chasing quite a few people on single sideband while I was getting started with the live stream. Tried to work a couple on CW. I did. I put in an effort, but I didn't get replied back to, even at 100 watts, so I don't know what was going on there. Maybe it was the propagation, huh, guys? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. But really quick, before we get started, big shout-out to our merch store, hamtactical.com. Leia, my wife, runs this with her merch ideas that come out of our podcast. Did you know that there's a Ham Radio Crash Course podcast? There is. Go check that out. Also, in the description, there's a link to our Discord. When we get done here at the end of this show, we're going to all pile into our Discord, and we're going to do some live questions from all of you. We call it Hams Helping Hams, or non-hams even, if you want to become a ham. Go join us over there on the Discord. Link is in the description. You got more than an hour to get started with that. We take your questions live in voice and text, so check that out. Ward Silver has been on the show before. Man is a wealth of knowledge, an accomplished author in the area of amateur radio, and just a really fun guy to talk to. He's witty, he's funny, and he condenses all this complicated stuff down to easily digestible thoughts that can get crammed right in your head, and hopefully we can cram some ideas in your head in about 60 minutes or so. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Let's talk a little bit about here to there radio wave propagation with Mr. Silver. How you doing, Ward? Hey, there, he's got the book. I'm
doing fine. All of a sudden it's September. What happened here?
Yeah, we were lamenting that before we went live. Like, what's actually happened? How did we go from hot, muggy days to my kid's already back in school, and now we just hit Labor Day. He's already been back for like 2 weeks. It's absolutely maddening, but I'm glad you're here. Glad you're back again. How you been, and what the heck's going on with this new book? What's that all about?
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back and be on Ham Radio Crash Course. This is a fun show. It really serves a good purpose. This what's going on, what do I need to know, what's exciting, opening doors, to people. That's, you come into ham radio through one of the doors,
door. There's many doors. Sometimes you kick them down. Sometimes you crawl in through a window. Lots of ways into the ham radio house.
Sometimes you wake up and go, where am I?
How did I get here?
How did this happen? Right. Who are these people? And you do stuff for a while, and then you start learning about all these other things. And people say, hey, I'm going out to do POTA. And you're like, what is POTA?
What is a POTA?
And so you go out, or there's field day, or a state QSO party, or a friend of mine today just made a 523-mile contact on 10 gigahertz. Not 10 megahertz, 10 gigahertz. Little dish about yay big, and Ron KO0Z. He's out driving around. He's not on a mountaintop. There are no mountaintops here for 800 miles. So
I wanted to ask you about this. So where was the 2 locations? Do you know where it was?
I knew you were going to ask.
Yeah, sorry. I wait for us to be live for me to dig in the questions.
Right? I have no idea.
But 500 miles is insane.
Here in Illinois.
That's very impressive. That's a very long distance on 10 gigahertz.
And that's propagation. He got lucky. He found 2 layers of the atmosphere that could refract microwaves, and he got his signal in between them, and off it goes. And he just had a spectacularly good QSO on 10 gigahertz. It's amazing. So
that's beautiful.
Anyway, propagation is that's ham radio. You've got an antenna and you've got an antenna, and something in between happens to get the signal between the 2 points, and that's propagation. So as long as there's antennas and radio waves involved, you got to worry about propagation.
Right.
And that's really key to ham radio. No matter what you're doing, there's some thing about propagation that affects what you're doing, and better understanding of it is more power and more knowledge, better results on the air. So anyway, we got a book about it. Thank you. This is a brand new ARL book. I'll hold it up here to there, radio
I'll pull
wave.
Up the website for you there too.
Thank you
as well. Yep.
That's excellent. And so where did this thing come from? I didn't write it, obviously. What we did was we took 2 big collections of material that had been in the handbook and the antenna book. And I said, really, there's no reason to have 2 separate chapters. Let's put them all together. Let's make sure they say the same thing in the same way about the same stuff, and bring it up to date, add some new and exciting stuff, and we'll make that the master chapter for these 2 big books. And then we only have to edit one thing. Okay, great. Well, I got some really good guys together, K8GU, K9LA, W3LPL, people who you have heard their call signs if you've been paying attention to any of the propagation bulletins or something like that. And they worked and they labored and they updated and they corrected and all this stuff. And by the time we got done, it was 60,000 words. And headquarters goes, yeah, that's a little big for a chapter. How about we make it a book?
Yeah.
So, okay. And put a little introduction with it. W2NAF, Mr. Hamsai. He,
cool.
Yeah, he did a really nice chapter at the end. Nathaniel is a force of nature. If you're interested in propagation, ionosphere, solar eclipse, all this kind of stuff, go to hamsci, HAMSCI.org, and poke around in there. There's a big annular eclipse coming up, so we're going to have an experiment to see what happens when the sun blocks off when the moon blocks off most of the sun's ultraviolet rays.
He's done this a couple of times. He's been involved in this before with other solar eclipses in tracking this data. It's actually a really interesting concept of doing
2017, that was the birth of Hamsci. That's where it comes from, is that first solar eclipse QSO party. Nathaniel was a postdoc graduate student at that point, and so that's where it all comes from. And in April of 2024 is the next big total eclipse that goes from down in Texas all the way up to Ontario. So there's going to be another solar eclipse QSO party. So go to the Hamsci site and you can read about how to get involved. All you have to do really is listen and make some contacts. So anyway, back to the book. So this has all been nicely packaged. I edited it, and the other guys put the secret sauce into it. And now you've got this nice, not too thick book, covers all kinds of propagation. And I guess the question is, why do you care?
Why should we all care about this?
Why do you care? As we were talking about, propagation matters no matter what you're doing for ham radio. And you don't have to become a scientist, but it's really useful to know some basic things about what happens to the radio wave after it leaves your antenna and heads for parts unknown and maybe another antenna. So depending on the frequency, the time of day, the season, the point in the solar cycle, all that kind of stuff, all these things have an effect. Right now, if you're a POTA person and you're out there operating on HF, you probably noticed all summer that the higher HF bands, like 10 and 15 meters and 12 meters, they're kind of flat. Why is that? It seems like the Earth's getting lots of sun, right down the north. Yeah.
We keep hearing about this new cycle. What's going on?
Yeah. How come 10 meters is dead? Yeah. I thought we were going to work the world on, a paperclip. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. And in the summer, what happens is old Sol beams down so much UV, especially high solar flux, that it causes the lower layers of the atmosphere to become lossy. It's called absorption. And so instead of passing your signal through up to the higher layers where it gets refracted and back down, it gets soaked up. And so it never makes it. Or another thing is the lower layers are so ionized that they bend your signal back down. So you only get little summer short hop is what that's called. So those combinations of things mean you're probably not going to get any real long distance DX except maybe to South America on the upper HF bands. Well, we're changing to fall conditions now, and the Earth, instead of being tipped toward the sun, it comes up to what we call straight up and down month. When you look at the gray line map, the gray line goes straight up and down at the vernal and the autumnal equinoxes. And so we're going to get an equinox here in about 3 weeks. And so fall conditions, the high bands come back. So you've got good weather, you've got plenty of solar flux, and you've got less absorption and blanketing from the lower layers. Wow, the HF bands come back to life, and it's a lot of fun. And then winter comes along, and it changes again, and then back to spring. And so after a couple of years of suffering or enjoying, whichever your perspective, you learn how the seasons affect HF propagation. Plus, you've got the solar cycle going on, and it zoomed way up. Oh boy, everybody says, "Oh my gosh, it's going to be 1959, and it's going to be 200 or 300 flux," and hasn't quite got there. It's on its way up, but it's kind of flattened out a little bit. We don't know whether it's going to go back down or whether it's going to go up a little bit. And so just watch Space Weather Woman or Space Weather or the propagation bulletins or something, and just keep your eye on things. It's a great learning opportunity.
So as far as
go ahead.
As far as propagation goes, what do hams kind of need to know? So let's start at technician, and we'll work our way up to general, and I guess not even HF. We're talking like, let's just get started with the VHF, UHF stuff. We're the starting point, and then we'll kind of work our way up, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think of a point to get started, the corner of the room to look out from, if you will.
Right. Sure. You get your tech license, and so what's up with this propagation stuff? Most of us grab a mobile rig or a handheld to start with, and we're talking to our local repeaters, and some of the guys are on simplex and that kind of thing. And then one day you're on the repeater, and suddenly this guy from Arkansas checks in. What? If you're not in Arkansas, that's exciting. So, hey, how did you do this? Are you on some kind of link into the repeater internet link? Nope. It says, I'm just on my regular repeater channel here, and I'm hearing your repeater. It's full quieting down here. What's the deal? Well, you just experienced tropospheric propagation because of a thermal inversion or humidity layers or something like that in the lower atmosphere. You launch your signal up, and it gets bent, and it travels along these layers until the layer ends.
Mhm.
And it's like it shoots into a duct. But why a duct for you Marx Brothers fans? Goes along
Yeah.
and then down it goes. And so suddenly it's at your repeater. You can hear this on FM radio. If you tune around into the empty channels, if you've got some empty channels. I know out there in California, there are no empty channels. Around here,
Right.
there are a few empty channels. And you can hear Chicago and Cleveland and Nashville and things like that when the propagation is good. It's about the same frequency, about 100 megahertz, and 2 meters is 140. So all of a sudden, wow, propagation. How did this happen? And that's kind of a common open door into propagation. Well, what else can I do here? Then somebody will say, "Oh yeah, we're going to go out and we're going to do this VHF thing. Maybe there's a sprint or something like that. Why don't you come along with us?" And they go out and they find a hilltop someplace. And so they're using horizontal polarized antennas, and they're talking to people 200, 300, 400 miles away. So again, that's atmospheric propagation. Maybe it's the layers in the atmosphere. Maybe it's a highly ionized sporadic E patch or something like that. And so there's all these different things that you can learn about. Microwaves are different than UHF, which is different than VHF. And 6 meters, it's called the magic band for a very good reason. You're just listening and there's receiver hiss, and that's all you can hear. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's signals from New England or California or Texas or whatever. And they're 20, 30 over 9 for a while. And then suddenly, band closes.
Slap shut. Yep.
So there's a tiny little thin cloud floating around up there in the E layer. And wind shear compresses meteor dust. Is that cool or what?
Yeah.
And makes it into a little thin layer, a couple of kilometers thick, and it makes it reflective enough that the bounces the signals back down on 6 meters. And you can tell where these clouds are by who you can hear. As the station path moves around, the clouds are right in the middle. Sometimes
cool.
You get double hop. And then there's transequatorial, and there's hybrids of transequatorial and E-skip, and it's a big rabbit hole, but it's a fun rabbit hole.
And it's a very scientific phenomena thing. This is not magic. It's complicated in a lot of these areas, but even something as simple as just your handheld is what we're talking about here. Would normally just smack right through the atmosphere and keep on going, is now getting trapped in little atmospheric pockets, or in that case, I love the atmospheric meteor dust has created a bit of a reflector up in between some different layers of I don't know, is it moisture or is it temperature of two different temperatures coming together?
Troposphere is generally kind of a temperature profile there. You can see the temperature inversion on a graph. It goes up and then it goes down and then it goes back up again. Yeah.
I love it.
Read it in the book. We could talk for 2 or 3 days straight about tropospheric stuff.
So let me ask, just for reference on the book, for people that are, they're interested in it. Is it kind of like it covers all of these different aspects, right? It's not going to deep dive everything, because that would literally be a college degree class, pretty much.
Yeah.
If you're really going to deep dive. So what's the depth that it goes into? Here's
your basic sections. First of all, it talks about fundamentals of propagation. It's going to define all the different terms and basic relationships that will be referred to later. And then it talks about the sun and solar activity. So all that's defined. Then you get into skywave or ionospheric propagation, which is mostly HF and low VHF. And that's bouncing off the various layers of the ionosphere. And then we focus on VHF and UHF non-ionospheric propagation, meaning line of sight, beyond line of sight, all these tropospheric things. Then there's a big section on propagation predictions. There's software out there you can use. Some of it's online, some of it you can download. Most of it's free, and you can use it to plan and predict. Then we have a section on VHF and UHF mobile propagation. So what happens when you're driving around trying to work the repeater and all this kind of stuff. What is going on? Why is this fluttery thing? What's fraction? All this stuff. And then we get into special topics. There's these really cool little modes like WSPR, which is one of the WSJT modes. And then we talk about sporadic meteor scatter, which is really cool. Every morning, you just point your antenna east and you start transmitting on MSK 144. And I guarantee you'll hear somebody else on 6 meters or 2 meters bouncing a signal. It's great. Right at sunrise, you're on the leading edge of the Earth as it's traveling around. So these meteors are like bugs on the windshield. Pow!
I love it.
Yeah, and then they make the best pings. A ping is a reflection, and you hear it, radio signal. And that's when they're the strongest because they're going the fastest when they hit the atmosphere. And propagation below 160 meters, we've got a couple of bands down there, and they're way different than 160 meters, believe it or not. 160 is way different than 80, just because there's this thing called the electron gyro frequency. And you can read all about it. And then there's a big section on ionospheric science that Nathaniel wrote. So there's sections, there's graphs and charts, explanations. We don't go really, really deep. It's not.
Sure.
Yeah. And I wish we had enough space so that there could be somebody writing little chunks that in ham speak. What does this mean?
Like the little blips like that are on some other books that like break this down a little bit kind of thing?
Yeah. Ham speak would be good, but then it'd be the size of the handbook. So that's where you come in with programs about different things and YouTube channels and all this kind of stuff where people explain it. So,
well, I got a question in the chat, and I was going to wait to the end. By the way, we're going to take questions in the chat. If you at Ham Radio Crash Course myself, or just put the word question in your chat somewhere, I'll see it when we get back to it. We're going to do that towards the end of the show. But right up top from Ham Radio for Non-Techies, thanks for leaving this question. Is the book easy to follow and stay engaged? Because, a lot of these, particularly propagation, that stuff, really heady. You almost have to take a break or you strain a brain muscle if you go too hard, right?
Yeah. And it's not fun if you get lost and you can't follow the argument. So the target class Ham, who's had the technician license for a little while and made some contacts and then got interested in HF and upgraded. And so now you've got this whole spectrum of frequencies that are available to you. And you have a little background, you passed your license exam, so you know some jargon. You should be able to dive in. And there's a lot of references in there too. So, you can read the book, and then for further reading, that kind of thing, for the interested reader, you can jump to the online stuff. So it's a lot like here. I'll have a shameless plug. It's a lot like this book. For Dummies. It's the same kind of thing. It covers a huge scope of ham radio, and it can't explain everything in depth, and it can't do anything more than introduce the topic and explain it, maybe some pictures, maybe some graphs, maybe some charts, and then like everything else in ham radio, it's a license to learn. Have at it, knock yourself out.
Yeah, I find that often the more things we need are those synopses type things than the in-depth theses that you're going
analysis,
through, right? The deep analysis is important for some things, but for a lot of things, it's actually too much, right? We're not getting a degree in all this stuff, and for amateur radio propagation, we really just need to make sure we're capitalizing on what we should be, and I guess avoiding or at least understanding why we're not achieving our goals in some cases because of propagation.
Yeah, I think at the beginning you're like, what the heck is it? And so you need sort of a definition and introduction. And then you go, okay, well, I'd like to give this a try. What do I need to know? So I can pick a good antenna. I know when to be on the air. Are there groups out there that
Mm-hmm.
help me with this? And that first rung of the ladder can be difficult. So once you get that first rung, then the second and the third come a little bit easier, and that's what this one is for.
Yeah. So we hit the technicians, the VHF, UHF crowd, if you will, right? So there's atmospheric things and phenomena that can happen, which are amazing in their own right. But just our day-night cycle, right? When it comes to HF, so you got a general. That's kind of who this book is targeted for. What's this next level of propagation? Now I got all these bands that I can play with HF. What do I do now, Ward? What do I do?
You spend your entire life in your radio station. That's what you do.
24/7 to figure it out
24/7.
yourself, to get an
Yeah.
important sample. You have to get an important sample at different times of day.
Yeah. Do you remember an old video game called Space Command where the missiles would
Yeah.
come down out of the sky? Okay. Yeah. If you get on one of these sites like DX Summit, DXSUMMIT.FI for Finland, and you log on, you just get this fire hose of spots from everything from top band and below all the way up into the gigahertz spectrum from all over the world. And you're like, oh, I'm going to work that and that and that and that. And it's like you're firing at all these different stations that are coming in from DX Summit.
Yeah.
And so you get into this overload situation. And then after you kind of get exhausted and sleep for a week, then you come back and go, okay, all right, I'm going to pick one thing. Maybe I'm going to do FT8, and I'm going to start trying to work 100 grids on FT8 so I can get my VUCC or some kind of grid award, or maybe worked all states. That's a really good way to get started. Just a very simple award program where you get recognized for.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and right away you find out it's really hard to work close states on 10 meters because you've got to have a real sharp up and down on 10 meters. How do I do this? That doesn't happen very often, but it's really easy on 40 and 80. So why? Why is that? Because the ionosphere changes every day, and the frequencies that it can refract change with the sunlight go on, hitting them. And so you wake up in the morning and you have some coffee and you go get on 10 meters and 12 meters and 15, and you work the opposite coast and all that kind of stuff. And then later, maybe in the afternoon or evening, you can get on 80 and 40 and work close inlets. So you learn how the maximum usable frequency and the minimum usable frequency go up and down in opposite proportions, go up and down through the day. And you go, okay, it's the morning, so the high band should be open. And then after dinner and sunset and so on and so forth, the low bands should be open. That's your basic relationship right there. And there is a guide to all the different bands in the book and also in the handbook in the antenna book. And you go find those, and it goes through every single ham band from 160 meters up through 70 centimeters. It tells you what to expect through the day and important seasonal variations, things like that.
I always try to, I get asked this question, right? When people are asking about HF, right? They're new to HF. They're like, well, why is it so much different than just using a repeater or using VHF, UHF? And it's like, well, obviously because you have this day-night cycle and you have to account for it. And we got these bands that kind of hopscotch you through the day-night cycle on an average day. There are, differences. But backing it up with a book like this, I think, is actually kind of helpful, because some people sometimes it's difficult for me to either talk through it or demonstrate it with like a drawing or something like that, kind of to explain it. So I feel like a nice little book or something that people can read through is also pretty handy.
Yeah. And you need to have 2 or 3 ways of understanding the problem, because not everybody understands the same problem in the same way. And so the first thing to do is read that introduction chapter and get used to all these different terms What do they mean by refraction? What do they mean by, all this different stuff? And you get a sense of the jargon, and then it's like talking to somebody about fishing. The first thing you're saying, well, you need a water skipper chug plug.
Yeah. How big was your leader? How long leader were you running? Yeah.
Right. Oh, you need a bottom leader, and got a spin cast.
Yeah. You fishing top water, or what do you? Where in the water are you running? Yeah. Where in the water column are you trying to place the lure?
Water column?
Right.
Yeah. So what's the deal here? And it's like any hobby with a lot of, facets, I guess you would say. There's specialists out there that are a mile deep.
Right.
And you ask them any question, and hours pass. You may never get an answer to your original question, but you're going to learn a lot. So you need a sort of a ham radio, a fishing for dummies, and you go, well, what did he mean by that? You go kind of read, and there's a website on it, and whatever. So find somebody that's doing what you think you want to do, and start asking them questions. Ask if they will show you can I come over to your shack, and can I listen to you work some DX? And you go over there, and oh my gosh, I had no idea. Well, why is it over here? And why is it, why do you do this? Or why do you, and that's where pretty much a lot of us got started, is we just found some ham and made a pest out of ourselves.
Right.
And just ask questions. And most hams will gladly help you out. Clubs are really good,
It's kind of interesting, actually. I don't want to detour this conversation because it's been really good, but I know that's how a lot of people got started. But I think that's actually that's not as available as it used to be.
Right. You don't just show up at people's houses and start asking questions.
Right, but even then, the ability to find someone that's local to you, that's also dwindled somewhat with the dwindling of clubs in some areas, not all. Some clubs are thriving, which is fantastic, but there's a lot of areas of our country where there's just not a club, and the repeaters that are on the air is kind of like it's a ghost town almost, right? So a lot of people are coming to YouTube and other places like these to kind of hear this information, and books like this. I actually still point people to books to say, at least you got a copy of this. This is something you can put in your shelf. It's a reference, just like the handbook is. I always recommend everybody have the AWRL Handbook because it's a important either primer on the subject with some depth, at least enough to get you going, so that you're not like just feeling around in the darkness trying to describe an elephant, if you will.
Yeah, you don't want to just flail around, you'd you've got a finite amount of budget, and you've got a finite amount of time, so you want to have some success, right?
Yeah.
It's not fun if you're not successful. I got to tell you a story back in the old days. Back in the old days when I was a child, you had to log every CQ, whether you
my gosh, I heard about this. I heard about this.
And then if nobody answered, you had to write X in the log. It was like fail.
Yeah, right.
CQ, fail.
Right.
Fail. And the first few pages of everybody's logbook are full of these CQ fail things. It's a wonder anybody stayed on here.
I know, right? It's counterproductive. You'd think that it scared more people away than it actually incentivized them to keep going.
Back in the day, before we didn't have the internet or anything, that was pretty much it. So it was sort of a gatekeeper function. It had to be hard. You had to achieve some level of pain tolerance to get through this.
What's the deal with that? What's with all the gatekeeping in ham radio, Ward?
Well,
I don't know if are you prepared to answer that?
Yeah. That's a whole hour's worth. But yeah, it's like any technical hobby. I think techies primates love hierarchies. That's what we're about. That's our whole social thing is hierarchies. And techies seem to spontaneously organize into hierarchies, pecking orders, how long have you been programming? Oh, did you had ones and zeros? That kind of thing, the old Dilbert stuff. And hams are really no different. And a lot of us got into it in high school, or somebody was in the military and then they got out of that, and so there's a big glob of, people with a common background, I guess, and they tend to sort themselves out into these things. And so it's kind of a cliquey,
I can see that.
Hobby, it is, but that's breaking down. I think social media has done wonders for opening the hobby to all kinds of people. That's
been my goal.
Yes.
Question on the book. I think this is a good one before we get to our proper Q&A segment, since we're talking about it a little bit. Questions on 2,200 meters or 630 meters LF propagation. Is that covered? Because that's kind of almost its own animal. Step one, go out in the middle of nowhere, right? That's the step one that the book says.
Yeah, get a lot of wire.
Get a lot of wire, yeah. Step two.
Section 7.5, propagation below 1.8 megahertz, page 160.
There you go, Don.
Yeah, go look up the website of N6 Lima Foxtrot, Rudy Severns.
Okay.
2,200 meter rock.
That's the step one, right?
Yeah, let me tell you about the world's largest antenna that was ever constructed. Was an array of beverages in Maine.
Maine?
In Maine, yes.
Okay.
This was for transatlantic radio telephone operations. So they had to get as close to Europe as they could. And I forget what the highway is, maybe Highway 6 or something. Anyway, it goes under the antennas. It did. And it was square miles of antenna. And I guess the only other bigger thing was a VLF submarine communication.
Yes, I am familiar. I'm familiar with the VLF stuff, but an array of beverages. What does that look like? It's just they're just running parallel,
straight wires. Yeah,
but for different bands.
What's that?
Well, so an array. So how far apart did they have to be? With beverages, is there a certain
about an eighth of a wavelength or something? So on 160 meters,
that's not.
They're going to be anywhere from 550 to a couple thousand feet long, and they'll be about 200 or 300 feet apart. And
that's all of Maine. What I know about Maine is that's all of Maine. Is the entire state was a beverage antenna array? Is what you're telling me, right?
Yeah. Well, that was built in the 20s. And it was the primary Radio Corporation of America, or AT&T. I can't remember. They didn't have the cable at that point, so they used ionospheric propagation, and they could talk to London. So,
that's cool. That's cool.
There was another one out not far from you in Long Beach in Palo Verde.
I know about this.
Yeah, okay. Look up Whiskey 6 Alpha Mike, W7AM, Don Wallace and his world of rhombics. It's quite a story.
We did a deep dive on him a bit on one of the after chats, and I think the important thing, the takeaway from his station, is this was a man who had a vision, implemented his vision before everybody realized what he lived on and what he built his ham shack on was literal gold. The cost of the houses on PV, the property value for that land is like Bay Area level prices. It is insane. You factor in the boom of aerospace in Southern California. He kind of predates that with when he built up. And then when all the engineers started flocking to Southern California with their money, they started buying up PV, and he sat at the top of all of it and just owned it, because that's where his ham shack was. And his antenna farm. Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
His station was the United Press International Southern California station. Yeah. And it was point-to-point worldwide. And so they had rhombics. The joke was he had a North London and a South London rhombic. He had that man.
That's how, that's how many he needed for directionality.
Yeah. And he was only missing one country, only one. And there was a guy, W1RH, Charlie, who had worked it. And it was a a Portuguese enclave in India. I believe it was DIU. And this guy, K6 or W6, was traveling, and he got on from there. And somebody called Don up, and he said, hey, so-and-so's on from DU. And Don was all dressed to climb these telephone poles. He was going to go out and work. He says, oh, I'll get him tomorrow.
No. Oh, no.
And he missed it. That was it. And that was the only thing that kept him from the all-time top of the rolls.
You said telephone poles. Everybody should understand this was in a time before like really nice, tower structures that you can just buy existed. He used telephone poles that he built in all kinds of weird contraptions. Yep.
Bolted together.
Together, yeah.
Yes, with these big angle irons.
Yeah. And that's what he did to build up his rhombic farm. We could actually cover this on the after chat. I don't want to go into too much detail because you and I are geeking out about his station. It's amazing. It's an amazing story. W6AM for everybody asking call sign. Whiskey 6 Alpha. Mexico. There you go.
Amplitude modulation.
AM, that's right. Yeah, because that's what he probably was doing a lot of.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. There's a biography out there by Jan Perkins in 5AW. It's a wonderful book. See if you can borrow a copy and read it.
Yeah, there's also some YouTube videos, but oh man, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I said Mary and you said Mexico, but the real phonetic is Mike, of course. Thank you, Scott.
Mike.
You run a live show, Scott, and you tell me how good your alpha is going to be while you're doing live. I'm just kidding, buddy. All right, so propagation, boy, it can really make or break a POTA activation or a contest weekend or a field day. Is there anything we can do? Obviously, we're ants among the powers of the atmosphere and our sun and everything else. But are there things we can do to capitalize or make good of a bad situation?
Yes. For one thing, you plan as if you're going to have reasonably good normal propagation.
Yeah.
Then you go out and you understand what are the likely things that are going to disturb it. And that can be anything from thunderstorms to solar flares. Okay. And so you go, okay, well, what if there are a big line of thunderstorms for this contest? That's going to change my strategy. So I'm not going to spend as much time on 80 and 160 meters. Oh my gosh, there was a coronal mass ejection. And that's not what happens after drinking too much Mexican beer. A coronal mass ejection on the sun, and it goes rocketing out into space, and it might just smack into the Earth's magnetic field.
Right.
What happens if that is a real severe event? If it's minor, what do I do? How would I react? There was, I'm trying to think what the contest was. I think it was North American QSO party just a couple or 3 weeks ago. And suddenly there was a big solar flare. That's just X-rays, and the X-rays went zip, and 8 minutes later they went pow right into the ionosphere and shut down all the HF bands, and you can hear that.
You sound like Tamitha Skov tonight, Ward. You sound like Tamitha Skov with your report words. Yes. Bam and zing and wow.
Bam, zing. Yeah, really, it's fun. Yeah. And you can hear the signals kind of go pew like that, and it's like the ocean comes in and just covers everything up.
Right.
And all you hear is a few signals, and then after a little while, it goes back down. So you're always, you go, okay, when that happens, the thing for me to do is move up in frequency. Go to the next. Yeah.
Okay. Always up, not down, right? Because you're sinking deeper into the ocean. If you think about that, good analogy, Ward. I love the ocean analogy.
It's different. And coronal mass ejections, when they hit and they cause a geomagnetic storm, they shut down the high bands. But a solar flare, when it comes in, it doesn't affect the high bands as much. And if you go to the websites like Space Weather, NOAA has a good one. It'll show you a map of the Earth where there is absorption. And on the side facing the sun, there'll be this big, nasty spot. And the color of the spot tells you the highest frequency that is suffering absorption from this flare. So you can say, okay, I'm going to go to the next band above that, and I'm going to keep right on going. So you plan as if you were going to have normal propagation, and then you understand what could disturb or enhance that, like a cat getting on the table here. And,
That's right. Yeah.
And then you're able to react effectively. So that's the deal. This is Miss Electra. Say hi to everybody.
Hello, Electra.
Electra the cat. So
we got a visit from Electra the last time you were on the show, so it's good to have Electra
she
back.
hears me talking up here. She knows I'm sitting here defenseless.
So you're that's right. That's cats capitalized on when you're defenseless. That is definitely true. Exactly. So there's some things you can do to avoid a lot of forethought, and looking this up is probably one of them. And that's why being exposed to it and educated on it is so important. But there's obviously times like field day this year, we 6 meters kind of got pooped on a little bit. Some of the higher bands were not great. That's just a reality of what happens. But as far as research goes, I don't know if the book covers this, so let me know. Do you guys mention any resources? I think you mentioned some of that in the beginning. Resources that hams can use to make effect or figure out how to make contact between a couple of different locations or things like that.
There's a whole section on propagation predictions for HF operation, and it talks about how the predictions are made. And what kind of software, and how do you do the predictions? How do you do planning? And you put in some numbers, you put in the height of the antennas, you put in the gain of the antennas, how much power you're going to use, what mode you're going to use. There's a really good online resource called VOA CAP, Voice of America CAP, VOA CAP.
I got it right here for you. I was ready to go.
You're one step ahead of me.
Love the vocab.
All kinds of cool stuff. You can spend all day in there and never make a single contact.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Nobody's ever made a VOA cap to VOA cap contact yet, as far as I know. But
even Whisper is one-sided, right?
and sometimes you look at it and you go through this whole process, and okay, I put in all the numbers, and here's when I should be on, and all this kind of stuff. There's still no substitute for getting on and trying, because it's a prediction. It's statistical prediction. And so every day is going to be a little bit different, a little bit better, a little bit worse, whatever. You can have a surprisingly good or surprisingly bad propagation. It's not an exact science. It's all statistical models.
You're in Illinois, right? What part of Illinois?
I'm in Missouri, so I'm in St. Louis.
Okay. Sorry, I know I always get the.
You gonna do one? Yeah.
So I'm on vocap HF, and I put in my grid square DM03, and I'm pointing relatively where I think
close
you're
enough.
at. Yeah, close enough. And so it's just band by band, right? Is the thing we're gonna run? We just click on band by band. So I've got to do a quick little.
It depends on which tool you use, but you can do what bands are open between these 2 points through the day, given the parameters.
So I have to do a thing really fast in OBS to be able to show another window, but let me show that. Window capture's good enough. And that's the wrong one. Hold on. That's it. Okay.
There you go.
So let's shrink that. So that's showing us, Ward and I, or it is predictive again. That's the information here. That's showing us as if we were to make a contact. This is roughly what we could expect to happen. What we think might be successful in making a contact. So how would you look at this, Ward, or would you?
Okay. Well, look at the big red one over there on the left.
On the top.
That's the most important one, and I think we can talk about that right now. So what that's saying is, if I want to talk to Josh, and these are the bands that I'm going to have good signal conditions on through the day. That's a 24-hour period starting across the bottom there. And so I can see as we start We start at 0000 UTC, coordinated time, and that's a skill that you need to have as a ham. When you get into HF, everything's on world time, and that's
World time.
world time. Used to be called Greenwich Mean Time or
Right.
Zulu. It's Universal Time Coordinated, the French abbreviation. That starts here in the Midwest. That's in daylight saving time. That's at 7 o'clock at night. So we started at 0000. Okay. And then every hour, you can see we go through the nighttime, and then about halfway through there, sunrise. And so the high bands start opening up.
Let's be really clear. The red is bands that we could have a contact on, right?
Yeah, those are good. Right.
Yeah.
Signal strength in VOA cap, red means strong signals.
Good. Which you're not seeing it. There's a little pop-up that says average is 100% likelihood, or around there is what they're aiming for.
Right. And you ask yourself, well, do I really need this level of sophisticated planning just to make a contact with California? Well, just casually, no. You just tune around and find out, hey, let's try 40. Okay. But if, let's say there was an earthquake out on the West Coast someplace,
sure.
and I'm trying to set up a link, a voice link to Los Angeles for the Red Cross or Saturn or FEMA, or anything else. I need to know what bands to be on at what time to get the highest probability of good signals, because probably you're going to be using compromised antennas and maybe not the high power. So I need to know the best bands. That's a very practical thing. What if I wanted to operate in the California QSO party, which is a heck of a lot of fun, by the way?
Yeah.
That's at the beginning of October. And I want to get that bottle of wine that's a prize for my state or something like that.
That's right.
I want to know when I can talk to California on what frequencies, and so I can work all the counties. So these are effective planning tools. The other graphs are similar, and you can use them for different things, but basically that one up at the top.
Look at all this. There's so much detail in this. You could deep dive it just like you said, and not even make a contact. The red, though, is really handy because, again, it's not so much that, like, if we do this, we will be successful. We can't really guarantee that. But what we're saying is this is kind of like the wave that you have to ride if you want to try and make a contact, at least be somewhat successful.
Yeah. So and that's standard ionospheric skywave skip propagation.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's turn it over to questions for everybody in the chat. I think now's about the time. There's a couple of comments I want to go back to. Somebody mentioned this is fundamentally how ALE works. And so, no, I don't think so. ALE is more of a brute force kind of thing. If you took two radios, right? Two radios, and they have 5 bands that they can quickly scan through, and they're transmitting little beacons at each other, and the other one can hear it, then they go boop, boop, boop. I can talk on this one. Stop. They don't do the smarts to figure this out. It's brute force, right?
Well, ALE, when you configure the radios, you want to pick the set of bands that has the best chance of communication.
Sure.
So you might do your planning and say, okay, which are the bands that give me a 10 dB signal to noise ratio, and I'm going to set up my ALE link to try all of the bands that can satisfy that requirement at that particular time of day. Mm-hmm. So there is some planning going on, but ALE goes, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I should say that is me talking about all the guys in the military I've ever talked to about using ALE. They go, well, the antenna says it does this many bands, so that's how many bands we do at ALE. That's what they do. They just brute force it. They don't look up VOA cap. They don't really do a lot of this stuff.
10 kilowatt amplifier.
Right. We don't care. We're just gutted it. Some of them don't. Some of them just have
propagation. Yeah.
Some of them really just have 200-watt radios and they just do ALE with it. But they're just trying to establish the band that works and they don't care, right? So
I was talking to a guy who planned for covert HF operations. And we were talking about near vertical incident skywave, where you send your signal straight up and then it comes back down over a region.
Sure.
He says you want the weakest possible signal to communicate with, because you're not trying to advertise your presence.
Correct.
You just want to get on and off and get the heck out with no bullet holes. So that's the opposite problem. You want the weakest possible signal.
If you ever, I don't know, Ward, if you watch a lot of television or anything like that, but Netflix had a mini series with Sacha Baron Cohen called The Spy, and he has a CW station that he assembles out of like clandestine parts that they hid in little things. It's really quite a good, particularly for that.
That guy and radio propagation. I gotta check that out.
Yeah, that might be right in your wheelhouse. I think it happens in like the first couple episodes, so you don't have to wait too long for the Morse code to get broken out. All right, so let's see. Question: I'll go over here. Can one infer from your book the proper altitude to detonate nukes to open a given band, or is it a lot of solar heuristics which one could parse the behavior in any of a few ways? Wow, did you suss a question out from that there, Ward?
Yeah, we took that chapter out.
Yeah, we took out the hemp chapter, the high altitude EMP.
Now that would be pretty cool, detonating a small nuclear device in order to open the bands.
I think it's the opposite. I think it works the opposite way, right? Once you over-energize the bands, it shuts them down.
It'll open them up for a second, and then it's like airplane reflections. Some guys use the meteor scatter technique to bounce signals off of airplanes.
Yeah,
and you can tell just from how the signal behaves that you're really bouncing it off of an airplane and not a meteor.
Right.
So there's a lot of, just a serious note, there's a lot of discussion about EMP and detonation of devices high in the atmosphere stuff. There are several really good articles on EMP and amateur radio written by a guy named Dennis Bodkin, Bodkin, Bravo Oscar Delta Kilowatt India Norway, and they are in QST. And if you go to the ARL website, they are public and anybody can read them.
Yeah.
So
he's named after an arrow tip.
I guess
the Bodkin arrow was used to defeat chainmail. Right. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, here's one for Ward. Great topic. What's Ward's next book?
Oh, that next book.
You're talking about the new one you just did, and he wants the next one. He can't get enough of Ward's books.
The next antenna book is off to the printers. Look
well,
for it in.
You just don't stop. Didn't you say you're retiring, or did you?
I am retiring. Yes, the 2023 100th edition of the handbook was my last handbook, and the antenna book, the 25th edition of the antenna book, is my last antenna book. And this propagation thing sort of got out there on its own. It escaped from the lab, and it showed up. Well, but I got this one. That's out there, and good old ham radio for dummies. And
so I misunderstood. You're not retiring from authorship, or are you? What? Wait,
I'm done. I'm working on my parade wave at this point.
You're done. That's it. You're no more ham radio for dummies. The version that's out. I mean, it's pretty evergreen.
Nice to me about if Wiley talks nice to me about ham radio for dummies, I might do a 5th edition, but not for a couple of years. I'm not going to tackle any more real big ones. Well, however, I gotta say, it's a book called Ray Tracy, Zone of Iniquity. It's a small ham radio mystery novelette.
Oh.
Out there, and I wrote that, and
it's a fiction. You made a fiction too.
Yeah, it's a detective novel.
I love it. Wait, what's it called? Ray tracing?
Ray, R-A-Y, Tracy, T-R-A-C-Y, which is a pun to propagation. Anyway, and it's called Zone of Iniquity, and it's available from Amazon. It's a print-on-demand thing.
That's awesome.
A little book.
Is it ebook? Wait, is it ebook? Can I get it on my Kindle?
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent. I'll get it. I'll download
check that out.
That's awesome.
I had a great time. It started out life. It was a one chapter a month for the Western Washington DX Club Totem Tabloid newsletter. And I thought, oh, I'll write about, 3 or 4 little installments, and that'll be done. Well,
I love
about
it.
9 chapters in, I realized I had no idea where it was going. And so I basically had to kind of figure it all out. Wound up being 19 chapters, and it's full of double crossing and, all this kind of stuff. And,
have you ever written fiction before? Publish, I guess. Publish is the question I should ask.
Short stories and things, but that's my only.
But it became a full fiction, right? I mean, it became a full book. So, I mean, have you ever done a full fiction book like that before?
No, never did. I broke every rule. I just started out. I had a first.
You just winged it. This is like a NaNoWriMo of a book that you made. Have you heard of NaNoWriMo?
Fun. Yeah.
Have you heard of NaNoWriMo?
Yeah.
So this screams NaNoWriMo to me. Like this was something that came out of a NaNoWriMo that you created. That's fantastic. I love that. Oh my gosh. Everybody's going to go buy this book right now.
That's fun.
You're going to sell more of those novellas than you are the propagation
it's got
book.
Great cover graphics.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Hang on a minute. I got a copy.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I saw the rest of your questions. We're going to ask more questions. Don't worry. Keep going at Ham Radio Crash Course or question in your question.
There.
Oh, look at
Ray
that.
Tracy's Zone of Iniquity. It's got a big skull on it and maps and
Is
stuff.
that a piano? Is that a piano top?
No. Do you mean down at the bottom here?
No, the top. Is that a plane?
Oh, it's a typewriter.
It's a typewriter key. Got it.
The first scene involves a manual typewriter. And because
I love it.
You have to get the book.
Oh, I love it. This is awesome. I'm so excited.
The guy that did the art for this is K1NSS, Jeff Murray. And he does wonderful QSLs, cartoons, little short stories. If you go to Dash Tunes, DASH tunes.com, and his main character is Dash the dog-faced ham. So that's where
that's awesome.
Funny.
Oh, that's great.
Guy. Great
that's
stuff.
Great.
He did the art for the book. So
let's see. Offline. So, do you know of any offline tools that do what VoaCap does, but offline? Maybe it gets updated occasionally. Like you could load on a laptop and just take it with you.
I think you can. There's a downloadable version, but I haven't looked at that.
I haven't either.
Time.
Well, there was that. Yeah. Good luck. I don't know.
Good luck. I don't know. Yeah, that's right. Let us know if you find it.
Here's another. This could be a part of another fiction series you make, Ward. What device does the ARL use to magically open the bands for contesting?
Contests are funny. You're tuning across the band, the big knob, or you're moving the mouse or whatever, and it's just, and there's nobody on, just a few signals, and then all of a sudden, about 3 minutes to go, you start hearing, beeps and boops and hola, people tuning up and stuff. And then all of a sudden, whammo, there's signals from everywhere. The bands are open almost all the time, Here's something fun to try. Get on FT8 and just call CQ, start on 160 meters or 6 meters or something.
Yeah.
Make a contact and then just go band by band by band by band by band and see who answers. It's fascinating what the propagation is out there.
We did that as a net on single sideband, and it was a blast. The crew got smaller as you went along, but there were pretty consistent how we could go. We started at 40, worked our way all the way down to 10 meters, and then 10 meters was wide open. I ended up running running a long train of people and contacts. It was great. I was up at K9. Cool. Charlie Tango's. He's up near Peoria, and he has a big station. Okay, and so we're calling CQ. It's the ARL phone contest in March, and all of a sudden 7Q7 something calls in. Any call sign that begins with a number is excellent. So 7Q7 calls in from Malawi on I think it was on 20 meters or 15 meters. Long story short, we just moved him around. He had a big horizontal loop up, and he was just tuning it like you might do. You put one up in your backyard. Yeah. And he says, we wanted to try 10 meters. And he says, it's midnight here. I said,
we have big antennas. We'll hear you.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Q5, it was very quiet. He wasn't particularly strong, but he was a lot stronger than the noise.
Right.
And we could hear him just fine. So we worked him on 4 bands. Just
That's
bang,
cool.
bang, bang, bang.
That's sweet.
Oh,
I love that.
I love doing that. You get somebody who's just tuning around, calls in, like even in the North American QSO party, some guy calls in from North Dakota,
right.
And you go, I need North Dakota. Let's try 20. Let's try 15. Can you try 10 meters? I don't have an antenna for it. Oh, just load it up. Just put 5 watts into it. I'll hear you. So
I love it.
Yep.
So I know you have the last time you were on the show, I think we talked about grounding and bonding. The question from Misha DeBear is, do you have downloadable, editable PowerPoints? You recommend people go look at your book. Yeah.
Oh, PowerPoints. Yeah. Yes. As a matter of fact, if you go out and just go to the YouTube and type in grounding and bonding N0AX or my name, you'll find several different presentations. St. Louis Suburban Radio Club has a channel with it on there. ARL has it as one of their videos, although it can be hard to find. And I put the complete set of PowerPoint slides out there. They're PDFs, so you can edit them with Acrobat if you want.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. This one you probably can't answer, but it's worth an interesting thought. Any chance the AWRL and/or you, I guess Ward, would release Chapter 1 of the AWRL Handbook to public domain so it could be given the perspective to new hams? It's a fantastic orientation to the hobby.
There's a lot of introductory material on the ARL site.
Right.
But why not? We've put down Chapter 1 quite a bit in the 2023 edition. But there's no reason not to put that out there. So if you're an ARL member, contact your director and say, hey, N0AX thought that was a great idea. I'm the editor of the book. I don't make the the business decisions, out there. But tell your director or your section manager or somebody who's in the hierarchy, and they'll pass it along. And maybe HQ will go, yeah, that's a great idea. Put it out there.
I gotta say, you the end there with the comment on Ray Tracy, there are so many people who have commented. James Hannibal, who, like me, I love to collect fiction that involves ham radio or movies, anything like that. I absolutely love it. And James is also one of those guys that loves that. He says he thought he heard of everything. So awesome to get a new one. Chris says, Ward, thank you for a new fiction to read. So he's super excited about that. Digital Rancher, another YouTuber, says Ray Tracy is headed to Texas.
Headed to Texas. All right.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, you asked if I was going to write another book. Illinois. All right.
You got a lot of people getting it. That's awesome.
There you go. New York Times bestseller. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
I've got another one sort of in mind, but I never had any time for it. So maybe, there's your question. Do you have any other? I've got another Ray Tracy thing kind of mapped out in my mind. And if the question is, when am I going to write this sucker? So, it'll be fun. Yeah, it's going to be called The Search for El Hombre, with hombre spelled OHMBRE.
Hombre.
Hombre. Yeah, that's right.
I love it. I have an idea for a book, and I wrote the synopsis for it, and it's a fiction. It's a total fiction. And I want to do it so bad. I just don't have the time, so I don't know what to do. But I love it. I love it so much.
If I had started out as a book project, I probably would have never written the book, because it does take time.
I love that.
But I did it every month. And, the editor, Jack Fleming, W0RJY, would go, well, where's my chapter?
Right. And so
I go write it, and then and I go for the next one. And then pretty soon you got a book.
I assume your writing is much better than mine, and your editor probably has maybe more patience than mine, but I am a horrible writer. And my wife is my editor, and she hates me whenever I bug her.
I don't have.
You're the editor. You're the editor. Yeah, I'm horrible at writing. I'm horrible, but I'm still going to try and do it eventually.
Let me tell you, my high school English teachers would be fascinated and appalled to find out that I made my living for the last 20 years as as a writer. But that kid,
I love that.
just
I
kidding.
love that. I love it. Super chat from Chris K0BLU. Thank you, Ward and Josh, for a wonderful evening. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Boy, I am. So one, I got to go check out that propagation book. I love having references like that, and I think it's should be a wealth of knowledge for a bit of everybody. But I like the idea that you kind of targeted it at the new general, because I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
yeah.
what I always aim for in those big books is, the motivated general who wants to learn stuff. And, I've had a lot of requests from real serious professionals say, it's not professional enough. You need to get more technical. I said, look, I'll lose all of those introductory level people. So my job is to get them on that ladder. And so they go up to where they can see where the technical stuff is. And we have really good references and stuff like that for the interested reader, But
that's always been my goal on this channel, is to try and drive people to general. I feel like if I can get them to general, I've succeeded. That's my aim, is to always to drive everybody I can to general. Nothing against VHF, UHF. I love it, but I really, it's just that the heart of amateur radio to me is that HF radio. That's where I
get everything.
Yeah.
With general. There's some little tiny extra bands here and there.
Yeah.
But the general is the heart and soul.
I think so. Yeah. There's I guess it's a statement, not a question. Chris Bricker says no Kindle version.
No, at the time it was just not
okay.
It was too weird at the time. The next one will probably be 100% Kindle.
I was going to say you might be able to just repost it with Kindle.
Yeah, I should.
I think you should.
Now that I'm retired, I've got all this time.
Yeah, redo it with Kindle, because I bet you actually will get more downloads as a Kindle book.
I'm sure I would.
Yeah, for sure.
Make it $1.99, but
maybe, yeah. That's like iPhone app price, right? Once you set it at that level, it just prints money, right?
Because this was released before everything just kind of went fluid online. Yeah. So it was just been in the background for a while.
I think this will be our last question. This is kind of a hard-hitting one, and I really don't know the answer to this. Richie's asking, why aren't there more advanced books from the AWRL? So I know that they do have advanced books, but maybe it's the smaller percentage, and maybe you can pontificate upon that?
Well, for example, this one. Okay. Here's Antenna Physics and Introduction. Okay. Very technical. Gets way into it. Mm-hmm. There's a saying in the publication industry that you lose half your readership with every equation. Okay. And it's a mathy thing.
Yeah.
And the technical books, they just have a very narrow audience within a relatively niche activity,
right,
for the general population. So books are expensive to produce. If you ever written a book, you have no idea how many details there are to a book. It's just insane. So the books really have to have a pretty good audience before they're going to commit that kind of resource to it. So I think, plus, once you get to be advanced, hey, you can go find textbooks online that cover that pretty well.
Right.
So, it's just they're trying to conserve resources and still hit the big audience. So that's why there aren't real serious technical books.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. There's always textbooks when you get right down to it, right? So, all right.
There's chunks of books, like, for example, this is a classic. This is by John Krause, Antennas. It's a standard. W8JK was his call. He invented a number of antennas, and that's the standard. Everything in the antenna book, you could probably go dip, rabbit hole, W8JK.
Right. Right.
Falls in the hole, and there you go. So if you really want to know, you can buy these things online for next to nothing. So.
I love it. Well, Mr. Silver, this has been another fantastic hour. We blew by, as I expected, without
Thanks.
any
It's
problem.
fun.
Do you think you had a couple of minutes to hop over to the after chat, say hi to some folks, and
Sure.
answer questions directly?
Over on Discord, sure.
Yeah. Excellent. So what we're going to do, for everybody listening, if you'd like to continue the discussion with us, we're going to end this live stream and we're going to go to the after chat. That's what we call hams helping hams. Our goal is to help you all with whatever your ham radio questions are. It doesn't have to be a newcomer to the hobby. It could be somebody who's approaching a new aspect of the hobby that they're getting into. And we've got a number of people on the Discord, on voice chat, that want to help you out. Just go to hashtag live-stream or the voice channel live-stream after chat. And that's how you get started. Link is in the video description. So, Ward, thank you again. I'm going to wrap up the show. So if you want to hang on the Zoom, I'll talk to you after I wrap things up. Or if you think you're ready and you just want to dive into Discord, you can go right ahead and get started without me. I'll be there in 10 to 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate you taking the time. And
73.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
See you next time.
All right, that is always fun because I know once we start going back and forth, we can spend an hour easily and just there you go.
Rabbit holes. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like I should have a cigar and a whiskey on the rocks. Just and another damn thing.
And another thing. Yeah. Do you remember when? So everybody, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. This would have been the first weekend of September, which should have been the Patron Picks episode, but we had a Patron Picks episode last week, so I wanted to do something fun. Ward was ready to go. We kind of already scheduled this, so I thought we'll do that. I believe, if I'm correct, that the vote for Patron Picks next week is space weather. So now I have to go talk to one Tamitha Scove to figure out when she's available, or, hopefully she's available. And we may have to move things around to make that work. So thank you for watching. Make sure you're ready for next week and all the other videos we're going to do. A lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. So I'm going to wrap things up here. Get ready for the Discord. First, let me say a big thank you to our patrons. You guys are, what help fund the channel and make this craziness keep going. So shout out to you all. So again, these are the folks who vote on the topics for the patron pick. So if you've got a problem with what the selection is, you can go talk to them. But generally, it's been pretty good, and I'm excited to have Tamitha Scove onto a full-length hour. I know I haven't really cleared this with her yet. We haven't worked this all out. The vote just completed today, but that vote won. So the patrons have spoken, and they want to see Tamitha on the show. So I'll reach out to her. It should be a lot of fun. Obviously, Ham Nation, she's able to support with the special video clips she does for Amateur Radio Newsline. It would be fun to talk to her in a little bit deeper form, but, we'll see. I may have to record something and play it, but I'll do it. I'll do it for you guys, okay? So there you go. Lots of 73s in the chat. Appreciate everybody taking the time and listening, and yeah. I always have a lot of fun doing these little interviews, particularly with people like Ward, who are so easy and fun to interview. I cannot tell you how much we didn't. So the last couple of times I've had Ward on, I had like a question sheet, and we went through all the whole thing. And I was like, he's got a new book, and he probably wants to talk about the new book, and we'll just kind of rap back and forth. And sure enough, it was perfect. So that was just absolutely a blast. So, yeah, Digital Dreamer, aloha, my friend. Boy, aloha to everybody in Maui. I cannot imagine all the issues you guys have going on, and families that are not in Maui having to support their families in Maui and everything there. So my heart goes out to all of you. Whew. All right. Boys and girls, I'm going to wrap things up here. Going to play you some memes, and take it easy. 73.
73.